people in the House of Representatives would say it spends maybe this year 35 or 40 billion more than what was in the sequestration.
Yeah,
but a lot of people...
That it is in a quorum call.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, I just had a conversation with the distinguished senator from Louisiana with regard to the flood control bill. I am the Republican sponsor of that bill and am very adamantly in support of that bill passing. Senator Menendez is the principal sponsor from the Democratic Party. Senator Landrieu, myself, and senators all over this country who have coastlines and rivers and flood issues are all very concerned. I want as much as anybody in the world to expedite that bill going from where it is now to the floor so we can expedite processing of that. And have been working with some who have objections to the bill or objections with part of the bill to get an agreement on amendments with the leadership on the Democratic side. So when we do that debate, we have a fair number of amendments that are equally divided in terms of the time, and the vote threshold is at 51 votes. I am close to getting there, but I am not there yet. So if a motion for unanimous consent were propounded right now, there would be an objection, maybe even from me, to let everybody know I am for this bill. I want this bill to pass, but I want to make sure that those that I've been working with to lift their holds are accommodated in terms of their opportunity to debate a germane amendment to the flood bill that's relevant to flood control. So I come to the floor for only the purpose of education, to let everybody know that I am the Republican sponsor and deeply involved and engaged in the passage of this bill. I also have respect and regard for those who have differences of opinion or have some technical corrections they want to make, and I want to work to get those incorporated in an agreement before we get a UC. So when we have the UC, we know what the amendments are, we know what we're going to, and we can expedite the handling of this legislation and deal with a problem that's affecting many, many homeowners all over the United States of America in flood map areas. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Madam President.
Senator from Louisiana.
May I just say before the senator from Georgia leaves how appreciative this coalition is of his leadership. He has been literally, and I'm not just making this up, extraordinary in his time and effort to work through the final amendment process here, because this process has been going on for over a year. We just didn't start talking about this last week. He's given over a year of his time, and as the chief co-sponsor has been phenomenal. What I think he would agree with me, and if he doesn't, then we could respectfully disagree, is that it's time now for the members that have been hearing about this and been told about this for weeks and months to get their amendments to Senator Isaacson so that we can make some decisions about how many amendments we can have. We could have 4, we could have 6, we could have 10, we can have 51 votes. We are ready. The Democratic side is, for the most part, cleared. The amendments we know about, we have. So the senator is terrific. Thank him for coming. I do not intend to ask unanimous consent at this point. The leaders are still working together, Senator McConnell and Senator Reid, and I know the senator from Georgia is trying to work through this. And would that be a generally good description of where we are, Senator?
The senator is correct. In fact, to be precise, there were 7 concerns about the legislation when the first UC was propounded on our side, 5 of which involved potential amendments that would be made or need to be made to the bill, or in their opinion needed to be made. In the case of 2 of those, in working with the leadership on the Democratic side, they're acceptable and would be included in the base bill. There are 3 that would be allowed to be debated with time equally divided on the floor, and they've asked for a 50-vote threshold or a 51-vote threshold. And there's the potential, as we all know, always for a point of order, but only 3 amendments and a point of order would be the only things that I am aware of in all those conversations. And I continue to work at this very moment to get a final agreement so we can get a UC, but we're just not there quite yet. And I'm going to try and continue to work towards that goal.
So let me just ask for a quorum call and to say I'm aware that we're not quite there yet, but I'm also aware that the clock is ticking, that it is Wednesday, that we may be out of here on Saturday, and we need to pass an appropriations bill, and this is something that also deserves a tremendous amount of attention. So I thank the senator. I yield the floor.
Clerk will call the roll. Well, she's... Senator from Louisiana.
Madam President, I ask the quorum call be dispensed with and then ask for us to go into a quorum call with time equally divided.
Without objection.
I think I'd get this by now, Madam President, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll. Mr. Alexander.
Senators offering general speeches this morning until noon, about half an hour from now. We do expect work on a short-term federal funding bill that would keep the government operating through Saturday. Current funding runs out tonight. If no agreement is reached, the government could shut down, although there appears little threat of that this time. While we wait for further floor action, we'll go back to comments this morning from Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley on the federal budget and surveillance programs.
All right, Ray, I'm going to leave it there and have the senator respond.
Okay. On the postal thing is until we get a postal bill through both houses of Congress, this issue won't be dealt with, but it will be dealt with within that bill. And 2 years ago, the Senate passed a bill. Chairman Carper of the committee is willing to pass a bill again, and I don't know when it's going to come up in the Senate, but I hope it does come up. I had a chance to vote for that bill 2 years ago. It's much more comprehensive than the thing you brought up, but it includes what you brought up. But it didn't ever get through the House of Representatives. Now, I'd have to ask Senator Reid when he's going to let it come up in the United States Senate. But I think the committee, by Chairman Carper of Delaware, is willing to move forward on it.
The spending bill, the $1 trillion spending bill, includes provisions on the Postal Service. It says that postal delivery must continue on Saturdays.
Yeah.
The Postal Service would like to discontinue Saturday service in order to save some money.
Well, I believe it's a good thing to put that in the appropriation bill, because Saturday delivery should not be decided by itself. It ought to be decided in a comprehensive postal reform bill, and that's something that Senator Carper's bill deals with. And so this is just a delay till September 30th, that the Postal Service won't go ahead until we get a bill passed.
All right. Here's an email from one of our viewers who writes in, the $1 trillion spending bill allocates $6.5 billion for overseas contingency operations, global war on terror, for the war-related costs of operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, as well as emergency stabilization and humanitarian response efforts. But it fails to fund $6.5 billion for 3 months extension of unemployment benefits.
Well, because the reason it isn't in the appropriation bill is because it's a separate item now on the floor of the United States Senate.
It sounds like, though, the two sides cannot agree on extension of unemployment benefits.
They can agree on the extension of unemployment benefits, can't agree how to pay for it.
Right.
I think there'd be more than 60 votes to pass a 3 months extension. But how do you pay for it? And, well, there's also a procedural problem, because, you know, Senator Reid has been running the United States Senate so that in the last 6 months of last year, he only allowed 4 Republican amendments to come up. And, you know, there's 45 of us, and only 4 amendments can come up. So we're also trying to get an agreement that we can offer some Republican amendments, because the Senate's supposed to be a deliberative body, not run by one person. You know, that's the House of Representatives, run by the Rules Committee. We got a one-person Rules Committee in the United States Senate, and it's Senator Reid. And it's not supposed to be that way. If you read John Madison and the Federalist Papers and the persons that run the Constitution, the Senate's supposed to be a deliberative body. It's not supposed to be run by one person and be run by the majority. The minority is supposed to have some say.
So when the Congress returns at the end of January, do you think that this issue gets resolved on
I think it could be resolved yet this week if there's an agreement how to pay for it, and let the Republicans offer, not every Republican offer amendments. I think we're asking for something like 3 or 4 amendments that we not necessarily get them adopted. We just want to discuss important things that need to be discussed that Reid won't let us discuss.
Are they related to unemployment benefits?
I think we would get them related, although under the rules of the Senate, you can have non-germane amendments, non-relative amendments, as long as you don't accept a post-cloture. Then everything's got to be germane. But before that, the Senate was meant to be able to discuss anything, anytime. That's what you call a deliberative body, the most unique institution in the history of mankind, any place in the world. Even the Roman Senate didn't live up to what we do.
We'll hear from Paul next. He's in Tennessee, Republican caller. Hi, Paul.
Good morning.
Morning.
I want to thank you for taking my call. And, you know, I wait 30 days to call in here, and I expect you to give me the opportunity to say what I have to say. Mr. Grassley, it's a pleasure to speak with you. I've followed the Senate for a long time. But I live in a poor district here in Tennessee, and I see children that I know are hungry at night. I see vets that come home, and it's a shame the way this country treats our vets and these children at night. And I want to apologize to you for that idiot about 9/11, because those folks, it seems like there's a certain party in our government just seems to forget that we were attacked. And there's a lot of families up there that do a lot of pain today over that very incident. But I want to apologize to you for that. But my question is to you, sir, this administration is the most corrupt, vile administration that I've ever seen in my life. And I'm Republican to the core, but I don't have any confidence in the Congress at all. They let him just run a sideshow up there, make a mockery of our Constitution and the people who fought and died for it. We ought to just bring our troops to the House because they have no rights here anyway. But my question to you, sir, is how does the Congress just let this man get by with going around Congress so many times? You know, fast and furious. There's Brian Terry's family, and I'm sure they have pain today losing that man over running guns. We send billions of dollars to countries that hate us, but here in America we got starving kids and vets going to bed hungry, and it's not right.
Okay, Paul, got your point.
Okay, I think his question was kind of checks and balances of government. You know, we can pass laws to overrule him, but they are not going to go through a Democrat-controlled United States Senate. The House of Representatives has passed several bills overruling some of the things the president did, or even trying to help the president in the case where he did an illegal thing like delaying the employer mandate for 1 year under Obamacare. He doesn't have the authority to do that. Democrat senators said he didn't have the authority to do it. So the Republicans in the House of Representatives, they control it. They passed something to legalize that, but it won't be brought up in the Senate. But yesterday was a good example of where I think the president is going to be checked on his abuse of authority when he made recess appointments to the National Labor Relations Board. There's a case before the Supreme Court that I think the Supreme Court will say that the president acted in an unconstitutional manner about a year ago. There's a case in district court now. You mentioned Fast and Furious, Paul. You mentioned that, and the House of Representatives has tried to overrule the president on that by contempt citation against Holder. But when you have a contempt citation and he doesn't honor it, then you got to go to court. So in the district court here in D.C., there's a case trying to loosen those papers up that the president stonewalled us from getting to find out all the truth about Fast and Furious. So there are ways of doing it, but they don't happen overnight.
We solicited comments on our Facebook page last night for you, for your appearance here this morning. And Shirley Connolly wrote this: why did nothing have to be paid for under George W. Bush and everything has to be paid for under President Obama? People need help right now, give it to them. I think referring to the extension of unemployment benefits.
Yeah. In 2008, 9, and 11, they were paid for. There's been a lot of times previous to that they haven't been paid for, and one time since then they haven't been paid for. But I think the only answer I can give Shirley is the difference between a $17 trillion national debt and a $12 trillion national debt.
Okay. Jared in Keiko Harbor, Michigan, independent caller. Hi, Jared.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Senator Grassley, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
My question is on unemployment. If you do give unemployment for 6 months, is it, or something like that, could you taper that to where the first payment that they get will be as much money as they're going to get, and it starts tapering off after that? Because the only thing they're doing is waiting until the last week and before they go out looking for a job, and I think it'd be more of an incentive for them to do that. Concerning Syria, we're dishing out $380 million to Syria for humanitarian efforts. Those people are trying to get back to the camps, to the refugee camps, are being fired on, and there's really no way that we can guarantee that our money and the rest of the world's money, which we're paying more, will be able to get to and provisions to those people and a correct memory.
You got to remember that a lot of the humanitarian aid to Syrians doesn't necessarily go to the geographical area that we call Syria. There's a lot of Syrians in Turkey and Jordan and maybe, well, I think mostly those countries where humanitarian aid's going, and of course it doesn't have any trouble getting there. Now the portion that goes to people within Syria versus the others, I can't give you that figure, but not all humanitarian aid would be in jeopardy. on the first question you asked, I think that you get more to a point of tapering off. I don't take disagreement with your suggestion, but I think that it's more of a case, are we going to have unemployment for another 3 months or not? Is it going to be paid for or not? That's the issue. If I were going to make any reform of unemployment compensation, we've had too many people that have, well, of course, I'm giving you ad hoc. I don't have statistics on this. But so many people that are employers in my state of Iowa come and said, well, you know, I offered a job to so-and-so, and they said, well, I just got my unemployment renewed, so I'm not going to take a job right now. I think that when you're offered a job, the law implies that you take that job, but you don't have to. There's no enforcement of it, and greater enforcement would be a better reform than what you suggested, and not denigrating your suggestion.
We'll go to James, Mobile, Alabama, Democratic caller. You're on the air with Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican of Iowa. Go ahead, James.
Hey, Senator. Sure appreciate the fire you got in your gut, and I hope you don't stop it. It's nice to hear straightforward talk from our leaders. I got a couple of comments with regard to unemployment. A lot of people, myself included, need jobs of one sort or another and would be glad to pay somebody at least minimum wage if there was a way that there was a database that we could contact these people, and if they refuse to do it, then they'd get taken off. And I think maybe that's sort of what you're insinuating, that that there should be some reform in that. And the other comment, Senator, I had with regard to the Affordable Care Act, Hobby Lobby, the Little Sisters of the Poor, and contraceptives. I don't think any of us know where this whole mess is going to crumble, end up. By the way, I'm an independent. I think y'all misspoken, referred to me as a Democrat. I'm an independent, but okay. I don't think we know where any of this is going to end up. But question, rhetorical question is, what if a Jehovah's Witness owned a Hobby Lobby or something like that? Should they be able to demand that none of the people who work for them receive blood? Because they don't receive blood. I worked in healthcare 20 years for the largest healthcare institution in the country, Ascension Health. Would a faith healer or someone who prays over a person, and they're all entitled to their religious beliefs, but I think the idea of and by the way, at Ascension Health, we all had Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I don't know any of the women that I worked with who ever had a problem about getting contraceptives or whatever.
Okay, James, I'm going to leave it there. Have the senator jump in.
I think, you've mentioned various segments of religious belief. I don't think I want to comment on the separate ones, but I think you have to take a fairly purist view on the First Amendment right of freedom of religion. And I have some sympathy for what the Sisters of the Poor, or whatever it is out there in Colorado, for what they're trying to accomplish. That'll be settled by the courts, I think. But I would even make more clear the religious exemptions within Obamacare if I got a chance to vote on that.
An email and a tweet for you. Back to the unemployment benefits. Mr. Grassley, why are the Americans last for benefits? Similar to what the previous email said. Yet it's our taxpayer money going for foreign aid and everything else. Why do Americans belittle the unemployed and the poor? Why do American taxpayers owe foreign countries? So relating those two. And then a tweet from Freelancer says, Senator Grassley, doesn't the GOP run the risk of losing voters in 2014 if you don't expand or extend unemployment benefits?
Well, it's kind of a case of when we started this out with unemployment being 10%, it's down now to 6.7%. How low do you go with unemployment that you don't do it? Now, maybe the people that are on Facebook and emailing you think that we're talking about no unemployment. We're talking about every state since the 1930s have had to have 26 weeks of unemployment. We're not talking about doing anything to that 26 weeks. We're talking about maybe once every 10 years, things get so bad, the federal government extends it for a period of time. Now, we used to only extend it for 13 weeks, which brought it from 26 up to 39 weeks. Maybe once it got up to 50 weeks or something. In the last 3 or 4 years, because this recession was so long and unemployment stayed so high, that you got to a point where it got to be 99 weeks. And some economists, this is not necessarily my view, but there's a lot of economists say that sometimes unemployment extension actually maintains unemployment at a high level, because what one of your callers said, that people tend to not go to work until employment's running out. You know, they don't really make a effort to do it. Now, that's not saying that people are lazy, but it does say that government, you know, the government has an impact. Public policy has an impact on people's behavior. And so how long do you carry that on? And also, there's a feeling that we ought to be spending more time on retraining and helping people get jobs. If you really want to improve the unemployment, you got to get people jobs and get this economy turned around. You know, I mean, this is the longest period. We call this a recession, but the unemployment has been as long as we had in the Great Depression.
On a lighter note, sir, if I could ask you about social media, since we just read a couple of Facebook comments and tweets. You are a prolific Twitter person. You send out lots of tweets yourself. People have made a lot of the fact that you send them out yourself.
And they make fun that sometimes I misspell when it's abbreviation.
How do you think it's changed your ability to communicate and other senators' ability to communicate with folks outside of Washington?
Yeah. Well, in a very general way, there's not a political view that can't be expressed by anybody in this country, as opposed to 20 years ago when NBC, CBS, and ABC controlled 80% of the political views, or a few newspapers, you know. Now anybody can express views. So in a democracy, a participatory democracy, representative democracy like we have, that is very, very good. The more interaction you get between government and our people, it's going to strengthen our system. On the other hand, it has give people with extreme views an opportunity to say things that maybe aren't even accurate, you know. There's a lot of misinformation that gets out there. So people are going to have to be very discriminating, more so than they were 20 years ago, reading the newspapers and things like that. And it's tended to, I believe, make the grassroots of America more ideologically divided between conservatives and progressives. And that has then showed up in the Congress of the United States. If you wonder why Congress is so ideologically divided, you know, you used to have conservative and moderate Democrats, conservative and moderate Republicans. Now you got Republicans, you got Democrats. And that's a reflection of the grassroots. It comes not only from social media, it also comes from all of the talk shows and all of the cable television shows you have that are ideologically divided.
All right. Joy in Whitehall, Montana, independent caller. Hi, Joy.
Good morning, and thank you both. I have a question concern.
Without objection.
And I ask consent to speak as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Madam President, first, the state of play in the United States Senate. What we want to pass is an unemployment insurance benefit bill. 1.4 million Americans on January 1st had their unemployment checks cut off. Unemployment checks are sent to those Americans who've lost their job through no fault of their own and have to prove to us that they're trying to find another one. So while they're looking for a job, they receive unemployment benefits. These benefits come from the fund which employers and in some way indirectly employees pay into while they're working. This insurance policy is there if you lose a job. There'll be on average $300 a week to keep you and your family together while you look for your next job. Well, it turns out on January 1st, 1.4 million Americans saw those checks cut off. In my state of Illinois, 83,000 people. These are people who've been unemployed for a while and are still looking for work. They have to. That's what the law requires. Here's the problem. The average period when you're out of work, when you lose a job in America, is 38 weeks. That's the average. We cut off benefits at 27 weeks. It means that for 11 weeks, a lot of people out of work get no unemployment benefits. What do? Well, they'll turn to their friends, turn to their savings, and then they're out of luck. And they may find themselves unable to make rent checks, or rent payments, or mortgage payments, food on the table, gas in the car to go look for work, or pay for that cell phone that you absolutely positively need if you're going to find a job. So we came here and said, it isn't right. We're getting better, the economy's getting stronger, but the unemployment rate is too high. The national average is about 6.7%. It's over 8% in my state of Illinois, and some states even higher, unlike the state of North Dakota, incidentally, which the presiding officer lives in and doesn't worry about this at the present time. So we came in and said, let's extend unemployment benefits to this 1.4 million unemployed people in America so they can get by while they're looking for work. Now, this isn't a new idea. This is an old idea. It's been done over and over and over again. In fact, under President Bush, we did it 5 times. And the unemployment rate was even better than the one we have today. So it used to be bipartisan. Democrats and Republicans would say, come on, give these folks a helping hand. These are workers facing tough times. We hear from them. They tell us the story. I ended up getting an email from a lady, 34 years she'd worked for the same company. Must be a pretty good employee, right? And then the company laid her off. And now she can't find work. Another person, 9 years with the same company, loses a job. When he applies for a job, they look at his resume and say, wait, you're way overqualified for this job. If we gave you this job, you'd leave the first chance you get to get a better job. So there he sits, unable to find a job. He's trying, but he can't. So they're asking us, can you help us keep our families together while we go through this tough period? And I think we should. So we want to call this bill on the floor of the Senate, pass it, extend unemployment benefits for 3 months. I'd like to see it for a year, but even for 3 months, extend these unemployment benefits so that folks in this circumstance get a helping hand. The Republicans come in and say, no, we object to that. You cannot extend unemployment benefits unless you pay for them. Well, that's new. 5 times under President Bush, they voted for their president's extension of unemployment benefits and didn't pay for it. Now they insist we pay for it. I don't like that. I think this is an emergency expenditure, but we live in a divided Congress, Democrats and Republicans. We have to find some common ground. So we came up with a pay for. We came up with a way to pay for the benefits for this unemployment. And then they said, no, we're still going to filibuster it. We're still going to stop it unless you allow us to offer amendments. We've got some ideas. We want to bring them to the floor and get them to a vote. Yesterday, the majority leader came to the floor and said, okay, we'll give you amendments, up to 10 amendments on each side to this unemployment issue. You pick the amendments. We're not going to pick them. They said, no, we still object. So today we sit in the middle of a Republican filibuster stopping unemployment benefits for 1.4 million Americans. What used to be a bipartisan effort has now turned into an extremely partisan effort. That happens too much in this town. It happens too much on Capitol Hill, and it shouldn't happen at the expense of 1.4 million unemployed Americans. That's why this floor is empty today. That's why we're giving speeches on a lot of different subjects. We are stuck in another Republican filibuster stopping unemployment benefits. I don't think that's right or fair. A lot of us believe that we ought to extend these benefits and move on to deal with our economy and putting people to work, try to find ways to make sure that those who are working get a decent wage. These are some things we ought to be taking up. But again, we're stuck in this filibuster. And that's why I come to the floor to give a speech on 2 unrelated issues. I ask consent that each of these comments that I'm about to make be placed in a separate part of the congressional record.
Without objection.
Madam President, there's an issue that is very important to me personally, but it turns out it's important to a lot of people. Tobacco. I lost my father to lung cancer. He died when I was 14 years old. He smoked 2 packs of Camels a day and developed lung cancer at the age of 53. and died. And I'll have to tell you, it's one of the most profound events in my life, to be a high school student and to live through a parent dying slowly of lung cancer. Well, my attitude toward tobacco and smoking, I am sure, is a product of that. And I came to Congress and decided, in a small way, I'm going to try to do something about it. I didn't believe I could solve the problem, but I thought I could help. So over 25 years ago, I introduced a bill in the U.S. House of Representatives to ban smoking on airplanes. Hard to believe, young people still don't believe it today, there was a time when half the airplane was smoking and half wasn't smoking. In fact, everybody was breathing secondhand smoke. And we were successful. We passed the bill in the House of Representatives on a bipartisan vote, and it came over here to the Senate before I was here. Frank Lautenberg, the late senator from New Jersey, took it up and did a great job, and the two of us together made it the law of the land. We didn't know what we had done other than to make airplane flight a little more convenient, safe, and comfortable. It turns out it was a tipping point. It turns out that when we banned smoking on airplanes, people started asking questions 25 years ago. Well, if it's not a good idea to smoke on airplanes, why is it a good idea to smoke on trains and buses and offices and hospitals and schools and restaurants and taverns and every place we go? So today, if you walked into a room and did what people did normally 25 years ago, pulled out a pack of cigarettes and lit one up, people would say, "Stop, what are you doing? You didn't say a word to me. You're going to smoke in front of me?" That used to be normal. Thank goodness it isn't any longer. What's happened is that Americans have a different attitude toward tobacco. The actual debate on this issue began 50 years ago, serious debate, because it was 50 years ago the Surgeon General of the United States of America issued a landmark report that for the first time conclusively linked tobacco to lung cancer and heart disease. Remember this, tobacco is the #1 preventable cause of death in America today, and it has been for more than half a century. When this report came out, it was at a time when people smoked in offices, airplanes, elevators, even in congressional hearings. In 1964, 42% of American adults smoked. It was hard to imagine, but until a few months before the report was released, the Surgeon General himself was a smoker. We've certainly come a long way since that time, and the Surgeon General's report played a big role in changing America. Today, we expect measures like warning labels on cigarettes, keeping cigarette commercials off television, taxes on cigarettes, and now no smoking signs almost everywhere. Thanks to these common sense tobacco control measures, smoking among U.S. adults in 50 years has been cut in half. The report released by Surgeon General Luther Terry in 1964 was a turning point. We've still got a long way to go. Approximately 44 million Americans, nearly 1 out of every 5, still smoke, and more than 440,000 Americans die each year from tobacco-related causes. Last week, the Journal of American Medical Association published a study that showed over the last 50 years about 8 million premature smoking-induced deaths were avoided thanks to tobacco control measures. However, the study also noted that despite this progress, more than 17 million Americans died prematurely from tobacco over the last 50 years. According to the Surgeon General's report, released in March 2012, tobacco use among kids is a pediatric epidemic and is the #1 cause of preventable and premature death in America. The report also found that every day 700 young people become new regular smokers, and of these new smokers, a third will eventually die from it. We have young people who come and visit us in our offices, in the Senate galleries, and other places. These young people are the targets of tobacco companies. If they can get a kid to start smoking at an early age before they have the maturity to understand the seriousness of that decision, they become addicted. Nicotine is an addictive drug, and it's in tobacco. And so they're picking up new customers by recruiting kids. I have yet to meet the first parent anywhere, anytime, any place who has said to me, I've got great news for you, Senator. My daughter came home from school and she started smoking. I've never heard that. I don't think I ever will, because we know intuitively it's a terrible thing, and it could affect that young person's great young life. The tobacco industry gets it. Our nation pays the financial burden of the tobacco use through $96 billion in annual medical costs, $97 billion in lost productivity of workers. And at the same time, these tobacco companies invent new ways to lure in these young customers and to entice people to buy their products. 90% of adult smokers began smoking before they graduated from high school. They were just teenage kids, which is why the tobacco companies continue to prey on children. They push products like e-cigarettes. They just had the Gold Globe Awards, and some of these red-hot actors and actresses who we all love to watch in movies, Leonardo DiCaprio and the others, were sitting there puffing away on their e-cigarettes. And I looked at that and thought, you're killing the next generation of fans of your movies. We've got to bring an end to this. E-cigarettes available in shopping malls that release appealing fruit and candy-flavored vapors, so it's more of a candy experience than a tobacco experience. That's one of the new tactics. Unfortunately, it's working. Earlier this year, Center for Disease Control released new data showing the use of e-cigarettes among nation's kids is rising. The report raised concerns that for young people, e-cigarettes could be a gateway to traditional cigarettes. More than 3.6 million kids under the age of 18 currently are smokers. And each day, more than 3,500 kids try smoking a cigar or cigarette for the first time. This graph we have here shows how far we've come to reduce the use of cigarettes, but also we've got a lot to do. Between 2000 and 2011, consumption of cigarettes in the U.S. decreased 33%, by a third. During the same time, the use of loose tobacco in cigars increased 123%. Cigar manufacturers are attracting new young smokers. Well, you think, why in the heck would a kid want to smoke a cigar? Because it's like smoking a candy bar. They flavor these cigars with cherry flavoring, sweet chocolate, grapes, and they're trying to get kids to start smoking. Over the past 50 years, we've seen a growing popularity of these candy-flavored tobacco products, smokeless tobacco, e-cigarettes, nicotine candies that look like breath mints. All these products are geared to luring the young into this addiction. I've called on the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to expand and assert its authority over tobacco products, including e-cigarettes and flavored cigars. Unlike traditional cigarettes, e-cigarettes are not subject to federal age verification laws. Kids can legally buy them in most places across America. And although we don't know that most e-cigarettes, although we do know, rather, that most e-cigarettes contain nicotine, we don't know what else is in them. Without FDA regulation, we won't. This Congress, Senator Blumenthal joined me, Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut joined me in introducing the Tobacco Tax Parity Act, a bill that closes the loophole on how tobacco's products are defined and taxed. It'll end the exploitation of these loopholes by tobacco companies. It means taxing roll-your-own tobacco, this loose tobacco we talked about, and pipe tobacco at the same level. It means raising the tax on a container of smokeless tobacco from today's 11 cents to $1, same as a packet of cigarettes. I'd like to show this as well. This is a story about Sharon, a 52-year-old woman from my home state of Illinois. Sharon started smoking at the age of 13, and she said it seemed like everybody was doing it. After her first puff, she quickly went from being a casual user to a full-blown addict with an expensive tobacco habit. When Sharon reached the age of 37, she was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer. Thankfully, radiation and surgery saved her life, but she had to have her voice box removed and now speaks through an electrolarynx. Last year, Sharon was courageous enough to allow her story to be used as part of the Center for Disease Control's 12-week anti-smoking campaign, federally funded national anti-tobacco campaign with hard-hitting ads. Well, it sounds like a pretty good effort by the government, but compared to the $10 billion a year the tobacco industry spends on marketing, the CDC campaign spent only $50 million. Tobacco industry, $10 billion. CDC expects the campaign to help up to 50,000 people quit. One of those who called into the quit line at CDC was a woman named Kim in Rockford, Illinois. She was watching an ad with her son that showed the devastating effect of smoking on a North Carolina woman named Terry. Kim said the commercial scared her and that her son turned to her and said, "Mom, you've just got to quit smoking." Kim called the Illinois Tobacco Quit Line run by the American Lung Association, was connected to the nicotine replacement patch program. CDC's anti-smoking campaign is one of the many tobacco control and prevention measures that's saving lives and shows that we must continue investing in effective tobacco control measures. This is a tough habit to break. One of my best friends in politics happens to be the President of the United States, who used to be a smoker. He's not now, thank goodness, and his family's thankful. We're all thankful that he isn't. But he still takes a little nicotine gum to chew from time to time to deal with that craving that is there. It's tough, but if people work at it and work hard, they can get it done. This week we commemorate the importance of the first Surgeon General's report on smoking and health and many other legal and cultural changes in this country. But as we look around at the proliferation of new, dangerous products luring kids to tobacco, we still have a lot of work to do. With the right commitment, we can spare future generations from this deadly epidemic of tobacco use. Madam President, I have 7 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session. The Senate, with the approval of the majority and minority leaders, and I ask consent these requests be agreed to and printed in the record.
Without objection.
Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Under the previous order, the Senate will proceed to consideration of H.J. Res. 106, which the clerk will report.
H.J. Res. 106, joint resolution making further continuing appropriations for fiscal year 2014 and for other purposes.
Under the previous order, there will be 15 minutes of debate equally divided.
Madam President.
The Senator from Florida.
Madam President, I would like to speak on another matter that's pending in front of the Senate, the flood insurance bill.
Oh, well, no, I think we're doing their bill.
The Senator is recognized.
To the Chairman of Appropriations, this will just take 30 seconds. I want to say that Senator Landrieu has been a real champion out here. We are still insisting that we are able to bring up the bipartisan bill to delay for several years the flood insurance hikes that in my state, where 40% of the policies are, we've seen spikes by tenfold of the rate on the flood insurance policies. Thank goodness there was in this omnibus appropriations a provision that would provide some partial relief for some homeowners facing huge rate hikes. The estimate is that it would only cover less than a quarter of all the flood insurance policies that are being affected by the huge rate hikes. And that's why we need to move forward with passing the broad bipartisan bill that will delay these hikes for several years while FEMA does an affordability study. And I had told Senator Landrieu earlier that I wanted to come in and support her in the comments that she made earlier today. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The Senator from Maryland.
Madam President, what is the pending business before the United States Senate?
H.J. Res. 106 is the business pending before the Senate.
Which is?
The short-term CR.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and I wish to rise in support of this. What this is a simple short-term extension of the continuing funding resolution we passed some weeks ago. This is Washington speak and budget speak for saying this. As of today, the money that keeps the federal government in operation expires. However, we have being debated in the House this afternoon a consolidated appropriations bill that will fund the government through fiscal year 14 and will come to the Senate either late this evening or will be on the floor tomorrow morning. Madam President, I ask the Senate to pass this short-term extension because it is a technical situation. This isn't the usual delay, drama, fiscal cliff situation. We did not finish when the Budget Committee acted and we passed the bill on a bipartisan, bicameral basis. We, the Appropriations Committee, were given a very stringent deadline for January 15th to produce an appropriations bill for fiscal 14. We have worked all the way through the holidays and all the way up to Sunday evening, and we have completed our work. It is now before the Senate and the House to be reviewed. It's on our website and so on. We just need a couple of hours to now complete the job. I can assure my colleagues that this very short extension is status quo. It makes no changes in funding levels. It makes no changes in conditions for the operation of the government. The Appropriations Committee, as I said, worked over the holidays. The agreement was made public on Monday. The House will vote on the agreement this afternoon. As soon as the House completes its work, it will come to the Senate. This very short, and this, by the way, this is a short-term CR. It is for 72 hours. It will provide the time needed for the Senate to consider the agreement, for the paperwork to be prepared, and for the President to sign it. This is a very short-term extension which will enable us to complete our work and even have a temporary shutdown. I urge my colleagues to allow this short extension to pass the Senate expeditiously so we can move on to really the diligence we need to provide in debating the appropriations bill. We will have a vote at 12:15. The vote on the at 12:15, I'm going to be clear, is on the short-term extension of the current continuing funding resolution. It will be for 72 hours. It takes us through Saturday. I hope we're done before Saturday. This is not a vote on the appropriations bill itself, nor should it be viewed as a proxy vote. It's just simply a technical time bridge to enable us to have adequate debate in the House and adequate debate and review in the Senate to do this. I really hope my colleagues support this 72-hour extension so that we can not have the usual drama we have of fiscal cliffs and shutdowns and so on. I must say, I'm speaking here, my colleague, the gentleman from Alabama, Senator Shelby, who is my vice chairman, is involved in other duties in the Senate, but he too supports this 72-hour extension. And we have been working so diligently on our bill through the holidays so that we could have a bill before the Senate, and I must say it's been characterized by diligence, determination, and courtesy. And but it takes time. It takes time to review. It takes time to scrutinize, and quite frankly, it took time to discuss the issues involved in the appropriations. All 12 subcommittees are represented, but I'll say more about it when we can bring the actual bill to the floor. Madam President, I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll. Mr. Alexander. Ms. Ayotte.
President. The senator from Maryland.
I ask that the quorum call be terminated.
Without objection.
I ask now for the yeas and nays.
The clerk will read the title of the bill for a third time.